Madam, are you trying to get me into natural dyeing? Because now I'm curious about natural dyeing. Yes, unapologetically 100 times yes. However, natural dyeing may seem daunting to some people. Where do we start? Do I need to have a garden? Where are some plants that I can use for this? So I thought, why not just go on a little hike and get you started with natural dyeing? Now, before we can start, a little bit of housekeeping. We are at this point looking for stuff to forage. It is then, however, imperative that you look up the foraging laws of your region, of your country. In Belgium, the laws are such that if I am in a forest, I can forage for personal consumption. So if I see a blackberry that looks especially ripe, I can put it in my mouth. I can, in a forest, however, not pick large quantities of the wildlife. That is forbidden and you can get a fine on that. But if you are near a public road, as I am today, everything is actually fair game. However, not if it is on private land, because that has nothing to do with foraging laws, that's just theft. The internet is a ever-expanding, vast source of information when it comes to natural dyeing. Just type in the name of the plant plus dyeing and you will find a lot of information. However, when you're on a hike, when you're out foraging, you do not always have internet. So it is also useful to have some literature. I personally have Wild Color by Jenny Dean and Create Your Own Natural Dyes by Kathleen Schultz. This one has great recipes and this one has a very handy list at the end. I just have it for the list, actually. It was a gift. Now let's talk easy, recognizable plants that you can start with that just grow in the wild. Disclaimer, that grow in the wild here in Flanders. I must say I am in a zone 5, if that means anything to you. But we have a first one here, right where I plunked down my camera, and that is St. John's Wort. It is a little bit late in the season for St. John's Wort because St. John's Wort actually starts blooming around the name day of St. John, which is the 24th or the 25th of June. It is now the 4th of August. Anyway, I don't know if it still does this late in the season, but to know if it's actually changed St. John's Wort. Yeah, no, it's not really doing it, but if you squish it, yeah, there it does it. If you squish St. John's Wort, it will turn your hand a little bit red. That's the sign of St. John being beheaded. But as you can see, it's a pretty remarkable flower with only the 5 petals and the many flower stamps. I don't know how to call this in English. But this is St. John's Wort. And if you look at Wild Color by Jenny Dean, this is all you can get from it. So the flowers and the plant tops. Pretty amazing range of color actually for this plant. I am right now surrounded by carrots. No, seriously, this umbel-shaped flower is Daucus carota, wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace. A reputable dye source, and I don't know where you live, but here we are quite inundated with them. And funnily enough, I almost pointed at a wrong umbel-shaped flower, which is also a reputable dye source. It's this one, right next to it, that is Yarrow. Let's talk about these flowers for a moment. So, here on the left is the Daucus carota, and this one is Yarrow. As you can see, they're pretty similar, but also very distinct. Now, when you come to points where it's not exactly sure which flower we're dealing with, because I am talking here right now from experience. I've seen these plants thousands of times and I know how to say which one is which. But if you're just starting out with natural dyeing, that might not be the case. Now, luckily, all of us have this in our pockets. And there are quite a few handy dandy apps to help you with that. Now, I'm using Obsidentify. That app uses pattern recognition to identify plants and tell you what it is, and then you can log it and get, you know, points, scores, medals and stuff. But rudely enough, this only works for Belgium and the Netherlands, but iNaturalist has the Seek app and that just works as fine. Now, let's go. There you go. 100% Daucus carota. Now this ought to be common sense, but don't use these apps to determine whether or not a plant is edible. Even though the pattern recognition apps are pretty great, I don't want you to get poisoned, because Daucus carota, wild carrot, also looks quite a bit like poison hemlock and cow's parsley, both of which are poisonous, so don't trust the apps. Don't put anything in your mouth. Thank you very much. Now, why not just use Google Lens? Well, Google Lens actually doesn't take into account where you are, and that's pretty important for plants, because regional variants, a thing, really. You want an app specifically for plants for your region, so check for that. Google Lens might help, but exotic plants in Belgium, not helpful. And just like we did for the St. John's wort, this is what you get from the plant tops of both the wild, so Daucus carota, and domestic carrots. So if you just have carrot tops, also the colors you can achieve. And here is common yarrow. That was the second plant that we saw over there. Fun fact, from Anglo-Saxon times, common yarrow has been regarded as a powerful herb. It was used as a charm against illness and misfortune and for stanching wounds. Yarrow is easily recognizable by these tiny little leaves over here. Sometimes you will just find the leaves and not even the flower, but even then it's usable yarrow. And then Daucus carota has very recognizable leaves as well. If I can get a bit closer over there. Yeah, that's just carrot tops, right? I wasn't kidding when I said that we are inundated with wild carrot. Look at all these wild carrots everywhere. This is a plant to look out for when foraging Daucus carota, wild carrot. It is much larger, and has, you know, these kind of leaves instead of the carrot top leaves. Do not touch this plant. This is Heracleum, and you will get skin allergy, or how do they say it? Yeah, you get some kind of reaction from it. It is poisonous to touch, so don't touch it. But it should be quite distinct from Daucus carota, because as you can see, this plant is taller than I am. Don't stay away from that. Let's take a seat on this bench over here, not because we're tired, and also not because of the Daucus carota behind me, but because of this. This is Tansy, or as we call it in Dutch, boerenwormkruid. That's some of our special Dutch sounds for you. Tansy to me is one of those unmistakable flowers. You really don't see anything like it. These little round heads with a little indentation in the middle. Pretty distinguishable from all the rest that is growing here. Now, it probably doesn't surprise anyone that the flowers produce a range of yellows, but the plant tops themselves can also make some really nice greens. Yeah, that's Tansy for you, boerenwormkruid. Tanacetum vulgare. It's not a vulgar plant, but that's its name. Onwards we go. Behind me right now is also another interesting plant, but I cannot reach it. How much I like to dye, I also do not wish to dye. That over there is goldenrod, but it's a little bit too close to the channel for me to actually forage. Maybe on a different spot in this hike we'll find a better specimen where I can get closer, but there you see the distinctive plumes of goldenrod. And as the name says, goldenrod produces golden colors. A lot of these very abundant, easy to find dye plants are super hardy plants, as shown by this Tansy just growing in concrete. What does the law actually say about foraging dye stuff that is growing on the public road instead of next to it? And right here, next to a piece of litter, humans, why are we like that? We have another interesting dye plant, a dock. I'm not sure which one. Could be curly dock or anything else. Let's open Obsidentify to give me some closure. I know it's in the dock family. Rumex obtusifolius bitter dock. So, well, it's a little bit bitter. And here we go, here is the color sheet for dock. All types of dock and sorrel, so everything in the Rumex family, can be harvested for the dye pot. And all produce stronger colors on animal fibers, according to Jenny Dean. You cannot only use the leaves or the flowers, but dock, if you want these warm, earthy colors, use the root. I'm going to show you this bitter dock a little bit more in depth, so that you can recognize it when you come across it on your own walks. Now, interestingly, in Dutch, this is actually called ridderzuring. Why is this not a knight's dock? That's such a more honorable, noble name for this plant, isn't it? I mean, it's honorable and noble, as you can see. Should be a knight, shouldn't it? Bitter sounds so negative. The distinct feature about the Rumex family actually is this little heart-shaped beginning of the leaves. Not the flower, it's not a flower, it's a leaf. So the little heart shape over here, and then the elongated leaves. Over here, I think, I'm going to give you a little better shot of it. This is another species of Rumex. You can see it by the very distinct little flower pods and seed pods that it grows on the stalk. And again, the heart-shaped beginning of the leaves. So that's Rumex, all types of Rumex, good for dyeing. They're high in oxalic acid, so you can eat them, but just be sure not to eat too much, right? So we've been looking down to the ground all video, but sometimes it's also interesting to look up, because dye plants aren't always small, neat, hardy plants. Sometimes they're actual trees. As you can see, or maybe as you can't see because it's too far away, but I'm standing underneath an oak tree on public domain. This is not a private oak tree. And oak trees, great for a lot of things. Let me try and find you some stuff to show. An oak tree, as a lot of trees, consists of many pieces. Firstly, you have the tree, and on the tree there is bark. Oak bark, yeah, you want it. And this tree is a fruit-bearing tree, and oak bears acorns. You want it for dyeing. And trees have leaves, and yes, again, you want oak leaves for dyeing. And this one is actually like a sapling that I apparently stepped on, so it broke off. But the leaves of saplings, I've got purple from them. Maybe a coincidence, but solar dyed sapling oak leaves gave me purple. Oak is such a good dye source that Jenny Dean actually needs 2 pages to list all the colors. These up top are the colors you can get from the bark. Here you've got the leaves. Oak galls, which are eggs from kind of wasp actually, also give nice colors. And then the acorns themselves. If you have an oak tree in your neighborhood, you're one lucky person if you want to try natural dyeing. So yes, I am one lucky person. All the dye stuff that I have shown you up until now needs a mordant to take on the yarn, to strike on the wool. Oak does not, because it is high in tannins, and tannins in and of themselves are a form of mordant. Now when it comes to the oak tree, my favorite way of using it as a mordant is in the form of oak galls. And I could not show you that at our particular oak tree because there were none. But I have some. These are oak galls, and as I've said, these are the eggs of a specific type of wasp. The baby wasp has come out of it, you can see the hole. You can crush them up and then you have a pretty strong tannin powder to use as a mordant instead of alum or, any of the other known mordants such as tin or copper or iron. As I said, you are a lucky dyer when you have an oak tree in your neighborhood. Now I kind of think that most people will recognize an oak tree when they see them, but this is what the leaves look like if you don't. For a European oak, that is. Ha! Finally, I'm actually a bit stumped that I only came across this very abundant dye plant just now. It probably is the most abundant plant that you can think of, and it's stinging nettle. How did I only find stinging nettle after this long? Anyway, I don't have to describe a stinging nettle to you. You know what a stinging nettle looks like, and you've probably have come into contact with it and know what it does. It also dyes. Specifically, depending on which mordant you use, it dyes these colors. Also, depending on which time of the year you pick them. I would get these right now because it's late summer. Early summer, much more vibrant. Now it is also a little bit serendipitous that I find the stinging nettle over here, because here we have another absolutely great dye source. This is a black walnut tree. I do not have to tell you that black walnut trees are amazing for dyeing, or maybe I will, and I'm telling you right now, black walnut trees are amazing for dyeing. Again, like with the oak tree we just saw, bark, leaves and nuts. You want them all to get these lovely range of warm colors. Now actually, this is quite a pale representation of what the nut husks can get you. Nut husks are used in the production of bister, and that's almost a black ink dye. Like, that's how dark of a dye you can get with black walnut husks. If you want some lovely browns, walnut, your friend. You recognize a walnut tree by these long stems with each a leaf on either side, one at the tip. It also has a very distinctive nutty smell. I could probably point out like a dozen more of these dye plants, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to swamp your brain with dye knowledge. Just give you like a couple, and might already have been quite a bit of easy to source dye plants that you can get started with. But it might have been a lot, because my brain is chaos and I actually know quite a bit of plants. So I'm sorry if it was too much chaos. Anyway, I have once again set myself in a random spot where there is a lot of yarrow, so I could just start dyeing from where I'm sitting right now. There is Tansy, and there's Daucuscarota all over the place. So, if my videos make you interested in starting dyeing, just do it. go for it. So friends, I do hope I give you some inspiration to go outside into the wild world that is the public road, according to your foraging laws in your country, to find some easy, actually foolproof dye stuff that are, I mean, they are to me quite recognizable from first glance if you know what to look for. And I hope I have shown you in this video what to look for for these couple of dye stuff that I found on a little hike in my neighborhood. And I am sure that in your neighborhood, wherever you are, there are even more interesting dye plants that you can experiment with. And well, there is also the possibility of just fuck around and find out. If you find a plant that looks interesting, but you do not know whether to dye with it, just try. I mean, I tried with potato, which is not a reputable dye source. The world is your oyster, but stay clear of poisonous plants. And a pattern recognition app might help you with that. So now, if you like these fiber and fiber adjacent shenanigans, then maybe you could like, comment, or subscribe, but of course that is all up to you. And as for me, I will see you in a next video. But before we do that, maybe you could look at a video where we're actually dyeing instead of just looking at dye stuff. Bye.